So yesterday on my system, things were working magically. Yeah, I didn't configure any authentication and everything was working. I was able to create buckets and all of that stuff. Yeah. So for you, if you have tried that, you might have got some errors. If you have tried, if you have not tried, godavaledu ivalle kada guruvaram. Okay. If you have not tried, it's okay. Since today is Thursday, best day of the week, at least start doing it from today. Okay. Right, sir. So what I'll try to do now is, yesterday I've installed Terraform on my Windows machine. Today I don't want to do that. I want to do work on Terraform on a Linux machine. Okay. So I'll be quickly creating a Linux machine, installing Terraform over there. Okay. And then try doing the work. That is the experimental part. So before that, we want to do something in Terraform. That is, we want to realize some architecture in Terraform. We will try to understand an entire architecture, a typical entire architecture where your most of the application architectures will be around it. Okay, right. Yes, sir. I have started recording, sir. Okay, okay, right. So for the people who have joined grooming session, I'm quite sure that we have discussed on what a web server is, what an application server is, and what a database server is. Okay. So here I'm trying to speak about 3 layers of your application, which will do exactly this. Okay, we'll slightly change according to modern cloud, but let us try to get into this. Okay. So consider the following architecture of a typical web application. Okay. All right. So this could be any website which you access. Okay. All right. Okay. Right, sir. Let me take this. Okay, sir. This is database. Okay. For our convenience, let us try to take some example. So I'm calling it as, this database is MySQL. It could be Oracle, it could be Postgres, it could be any database software. I'm just giving, since I have to give some name, I'm calling it as MySQL. Okay, right. And then let me try to take some server. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll have 2 servers. Okay, right. Okay. So this server handles my business logic. This server is basically, okay, web. Okay, let me remove this term which is called as logic. Okay, so this layer or this tier of my application is handles web. So right now I have one web server, one business server, and one database server. Okay, right. So on this web server, I'll be installing something which we call as Nginx. I can install Apache also over here because we'll be doing too much of Apache. I want to do something else. Yeah, right. Now this is Nginx server. This could be anything. This could be Python Flask. This could be Python Django. This could be Express.js. This could be ASP.NET Core. Okay. So let me try to take Tomcat. Tomcat is a server which can basically run Java based applications or Java applications. Okay. You can replace that with any technology, technological choice of yours. Okay. Now, my users. Okay. This is what users will do from some browser of theirs, whatever they have in their system, they will be making a request to this web server. So let me try to write request response workflow in blue color. Okay. Nginx will forward that request to Tomcat. Tomcat to perform that logic might make some calls to MySQL. And MySQL responds back again with some data. Tomcat will process the data, give the response back to Nginx server. And Nginx server will basically build the web page and give it back to your application. So we are speaking about three very simple layers of a classic application. So all of your data, for example, you can think of it as any site which you use, bus booking site. Okay, ticket booking on your for bus tickets. All the information about your routes, everything is basically present in this database. Okay, so you said that I want to book a ticket. So that business logic is handled by Tomcat server, and for handling that business logic, it needs to write some records and read some records from database, which it does. Okay, right. And now one requirement is between all of these servers, there should be some network connectivity. All these servers should be reachable to each other. This will not work out without this underlying network connectivity. Okay, so you have some sort of network, and then we are speaking about three architectural components. Okay, so why you have only one database? Why don't you have two databases? We might have it, but this is the simplest form of representation. Okay, right. So this is what your application is. Okay, right. So consider the typical web application. For example, some ticket booking, bus ticket, movie ticket, that is your choice. You fit in whatever you wanted. Okay, right. So now in this application, okay, right. Okay, sir. Now, if I have to run that kind of an application, remember our workflow. Whenever developer makes the changes to the code, you have to build the package. Once you build the package, you need to deploy the applications. Okay, so to deploy the application, my application typically looks like this. Okay, now let us try to see if I have to realize this application. To realize this application on AWS, what is that we typically do? Let me try doing that, and then I'll try to draw the representation in Azure. For the next few days, we will try to realize this. For the next few days, we'll try to realize this part. Okay, right. So in AWS, if I have to do the same thing, then the first thing which I will do is I'll try to create a network. I'll try to create a network in AWS cloud. which is basically called as AWS VPC. Am I clear on this, sir? So this VPC forms a network. Now, in this, what we will try to do is we will try to create something called as in AWS, you cannot connect things directly to your network. They should be part of smaller networks. The story is same in any cloud. Okay, so I don't need 4, I just need 2. Okay, sir. So this, let me call it as DB1 subnet, and this, let me call it as DB2 subnet. Are you clear on this, sir? And then let me call this as business1 subnet. I don't want to type all of this again. This is business2 subnet. Okay. So generally, what is it you are trying to do? You are trying to create a MySQL on some server. What AWS tries to tell us, there is no need for you to do all of that. I have a service for you, which is called as RDS. Okay. So on RDS, I can basically typically run any database or any relational database mostly. So MySQL falls under that category. I'm just trying to look out for this. Okay, fine. Let me copy this. So you would have RDS. So are we clear on this? Yeah, right. Now to come up with this Tomcat server, there are many options in AWS. So you can go with virtual machine, you can go with containers and all that stuff. For now, let us deal with only virtual machines. So I'll be trying to create something which we call as EC2, which is a virtual machine. Right, fine, sir. And in this virtual machine, I'll be installing something which I Tomcat. Okay, sir. Now, if I want to make it more available, okay, so even if the users want to run this application, I might be running 2 instances of it. So that's the reason I'm just creating the other subnet. So let me draw 2 instances, because even if one fails, we have one more doing the job for us. Okay, right. And then over here, if you try to see, I have written as Nginx. What was the responsibility of Nginx? Whenever user makes a request to Nginx, it will forward the request to, yeah. So now this activity can be done as similarly by using Nginx, but there is a better option, which is AWS has something called as load balancer. Let us try to do something which is in the modern architectural choices, not in a very traditional way. But what you would be achieving is exactly the same thing. Okay. So now your users, okay, will use the same browser. In the earlier case, they were interacting with Nginx. Now they will interact with load balancer. Load balancer will forward the request to either this Tomcat or this Tomcat, depending on whatever is free. And these things will speak with, are we clear on this? So the components which I'm supposed to create is, I'm supposed to create something called as VPC, which creates a network. I'm supposed to create subnets, because anything that has to connect to a network in a cloud has to be part of subnet. and then in that I'll be trying to create these resources. Okay, I can do the same thing, exactly the same thing like Nginx over here, but this is the better way. This is the better way. Are we clear on this? Yeah, this is the AWS's way of realizing the same architecture. Now let us try to do the same thing in Azure also. Yeah. Okay. The high level overview is as shown below. Okay. Now let me use the same thing. If I have to do it on Azure, I am showing AWS and Azure examples. You can relate this with in any other cloud, even if it is Oracle Cloud, Google Cloud, whatever it is. So if it is Azure, what you would do is you would try to create again a network. Okay, right. So the network in Azure, in AWS, you have called it as VPC, but in Azure, you call it as VNet, virtual network. So this is Azure VNet. Okay. So in Azure also, you need to create subnets, but there is no need to create multiple subnets because the way Azure works. So here I'll have data subnet or DB subnet, whatever you call it, and then we have something called as business subnet. Okay, right. And now in database subnet, there you have created what we need is a MySQL server. AWS tries to tell that I have RDS. Azure tries to tell that I have Azure MySQL. That is, this is the icon. This is the icon. Okay. Okay, sir. Yeah. And then here you have created EC2 machine there. Azure has something which we call as Azure virtual machines. They are not different, sir. They're almost the same. There is not much of, even if you want me to draw this architecture in GCP cloud, you will have almost the same representation. So since we don't want one, I have drawn two representations of it, and in this I'll be having Tomcat. Okay, some Tomcat server which runs over here as well as here. Okay, so you can create Nginx virtual machine, or you can go with Azure load balancer. Icon. It's okay. Okay. Now rest of the story remains same. Okay. So you will have your users here who are using some kind of browsers to log in into the application. They speak with the load balancer. Load balancer forwards the request to one of these two things, and then they interact with. Yeah. If you try to see, they are not very much different. One I have drawn in a very traditional architecture, which was not related to any cloud. Then I have drawn the same thing in AWS. Okay. So in Azure also you will have similar thing. Azure also has a network. GCP also has a network. GCP also has some database. GCP also has a way to create virtual machines. Okay, so you can do the same thing on any cloud. But our focus throughout this classes discussion will be AWS and Azure. Yeah. Are they very much different, sir? No. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Right. So are we clear about the architecture which we are getting into? So I'll have one MySQL server, one virtual machine with some Tomcat installed in that, and then I'll have some kind of a load balancer. This is what I'm trying to do. Okay. So for doing this, whenever you want to automate anything, what do you think is required? If I ask you to do automation of anything, what is the first and foremost thing which you should have? Yeah, good. So we should know how it is done manually. So before creating anything from Terraform, first let us realize or look into the steps of how it is done manually. And then we will try to convert those manual steps into something which Terraform understands. Okay, so this will be our workflow. So I'll call it as ఈ టెక్నాలజీ వాడదాం. Generally in your organization you might see wow document. Wow అంటే ఆశ్చర్యపడిన డాక్యుమెంట్ కాదు. Wow stands for ways of working. Similarly, there is one more thing, mom. Okay, ఇలాంటి acronyms ఎక్కువ వాడతారు organization లో. Okay, wow document is ways of working. Mom means minutes of meeting. Okay, so whenever you see any organizational people try to tell that, okay, do you have mom? మా అమ్మ గురించి వీడికి ఎందుకు అనుకోక. Right, mom actually stands for minutes of meeting. So whenever you have any enterprise level meetings or any organizational meetings, there should be some notes on what was discussed, what was the outcomes. Right, they're not speaking about your mom. Yeah, right. Fine, sir. Now what we will try to do is, let's create the architecture, or let's realize the architecture manually. Make a note of, we need three things from our discussion yesterday. What are they? Resource, inputs, and what are the outputs which you are expecting. And then once you know this, find resources in Terraform to achieve the above manual steps. This is what we'll be doing. Okay, so in this process we will try to learn Terraform as well as we are trying to realize some architecture. Tomorrow once you go into your organization, what would happen is your architecture might be slightly different. Rather than having 3 tiers, you might have 5 tiers, but this approach will work out. Okay, so whenever anyone gives you a work in Terraform, the first thing which you should know is how it is done manually. So if you are not good at that, you would not be able to write effective Terraform template for that. Okay, sir. Okay, now so let us basically try to see how to deal with Terraform. Okay, and what is that we need to do whenever we configure a provider. Okay, do you remember provider? Configuring a provider in Terraform. And my first provider which I want to speak about is AWS Provider. Then I'll try to speak about Azure Provider. Then you will come to know why it was working in my system yesterday without doing anything. Okay, right. Fine, sir. So for this, what I'll try to do is install Terraform on a Linux machine. Okay, right. So why am I doing this? Because that is what most of the organizations use Terraform from in the actual environment. So here there are two things which you need to understand. Developing Terraform, you do it on your laptop, which is okay, absolutely fine. But actually, whatever you have developed, that should work on a build server, and build server is most of the times it is going to be a Linux machine. So you should know how to make your scripts work in two environments. One is your laptop, the other one is a Linux server. Why organizations use Linux server? Why don't they use Windows laptop? Because for your Windows laptop, they need to pay yearly licensing cost, and every organization definitely wants to save licensing cost. If I'm using a Linux machine, it is basically free. Yeah, right. Okay. Any update on JOP? Sir, today at the end of the session, I'll try to speak about that, sir. Okay. Right. Okay. Fine. When it's going to start, I had done my Linux. Okay, sir. We'll speak about it, sir. Kindly let us stick to Terraform. Okay. నేను ఏమన్నా ప్రశ్నలో మీకు ఇంకేమైనా ఉంటే ట్రై టు స్పీక్ ఇట్ అట్ ద ఎండ్. ఓకే రైట్. సో మంచి ఎండ కొడుతున్నప్పుడు వెన్నెలను గుర్తు చేసుకుంటే ఎంత చిరాకుగా ఉంటుందో. ఓకే, టెరాఫామ్ మధ్యలో ఇలాంటి మాట్లాడితే అంతే చిరాకుగా ఉంటుంది. రైట్, లెట్ us speak about Terraform and then I'll give you time at the last. Okay, sir. Now let me try to install Terraform on a Linux machine. You can create Linux machine on anywhere depending on where you have account. For now, since this is my first machine, I'll try to do it on AWS. So let me go to AWS. Okay, I have my AWS account. Yeah, for the people who are going to join foundation grooming session today, that is whatever I'm trying to do, we'll be doing in the evening, because in your account you'll be creating one Linux machine and logging into that Linux machine. Okay, so even if these steps are considered, you are finding it fast, don't worry about it. Join the evening grooming session, because this you will be doing it at a very slow pace there. Okay, right, sir. So now I want to create a virtual machine. A service which can create a virtual machine is EC2. So let me select that EC2. Okay, రెండు ఎందుకు రన్ అవుతుంది ఇందులో? ఓర్ వావ్. Okay, right, fine then. So let me try to tell that I want to launch an instance, and here I'll try to name this as, this is basically for, okay, we are installing Terraform in this, right? Terraform. And then these are different Linux distributions. Let me choose Ubuntu. And I'm trying to take the latest version of Ubuntu, which is 22. If you want older versions, you can select it from here, right? And instance type is T2 micro. And today I'll be creating a new key pair, which I'll be calling as for Terraform. And then I want that to be in PEM format. Let me click on create key pair. Okay, right, sir? And then network settings, for me this is enough. Just leave it to default, and I don't want to change any of the other details. And let me click on launch instance. Okay, sir, fine then. And let me click EC2 over here. Let me wait for this machine to be running. So this machine, is it running? Yes. So now this is the username or IP address of this machine. To connect to this machine, I have to execute a SSH command. SSH, username is Ubuntu @ this. But the only difference in AWS is you don't have password, so you will be using -i in downloads. I have just now created something called as Terraform dot. Okay, so for the people for whom this is looking confusing, today at 5 o'clock we have a grooming session. Come down over there, we will discuss about it. Okay, yeah. So let me click on this for Terraform. For Terraform dot. Yes. So am I inside the Linux machine? Yes. Okay, sir. Now, yesterday we have seen installing Terraform, and I would always prefer using a official documentation. Okay. So if you try to look into this, okay, I want oh yes, I want a Linux, and then I'm dealing with Ubuntu or Debian. If you're working on other operating systems, they have given all the different options over. So right now, since I'm working with Ubuntu, okay, create a Linux VM and SSH into it and execute the steps based on your distribution from here. So since my distribution is Ubuntu, okay, I'm going to execute these steps. Okay, so there is something called as copy. I can copy this, go over here and paste it. Let us see what happens. Okay, Terraform hyphen hyphen. If you remember, yesterday the version was 1.4.0. Just have you seen we got one? Things are not stable. You get releases all the time. Yes. So last time the same thing happened in Kubernetes. We were discussing about 1.25. By the time we came to end of that session, 1.26 was released. Yeah. All right. So is Terraform installed over here, sir? Yes. Okay. Fine, sir. Okay. Now I want to configure AWS Provider. Okay. Terraform Provider AWS. Okay. Directly go to documentation. We don't need all of this. Okay. Yeah. Are you seeing guides? Yeah. And then if you look into any Terraform, you would have something called as authentication and configuration. Okay. So how does Terraform work? First, let me try to speak about that. Then you will try to understand. Okay. So when you install Terraform, okay. When you install Terraform, you get basically Terraform. And this Terraform has no intelligence about AWS or anything for that matter. Okay. So ఉత్త టెరాఫామ్ కి పెద్ద తెలివితేటలు ఉండవు. సో ఓన్లీ టెరాఫామ్ డజంట్ హ్యావ్ ఎనీ ఇంటెలిజెన్స్. ఓకే, రైట్. సో ఇఫ్ యూ వాంట్ టు స్పీక్ విత్ AWS, okay, so our end goal is to speak with AWS. This is what we want. Okay, so to speak with AWS in the sense to speak with your AWS account, right? Yes or no? Yeah, right. So generally any cloud will have different ways of speaking with that. Okay, so generally there are three popular ways for any cloud for that matter. One is speaking via website, which I'm trying to do right now. I've logged in into that website and then created a Linux machine. That is UI based access. There is one more access which is called as command line access. You can speak with AWS by typing some commands. The third access is basically by writing code. By writing code. So what Terraform does is Terraform has something called as provider. If you remember, we have spoken about this yesterday. Yeah, this provider is basically something which gives intelligence of AWS to Terraform. So in Terraform, once you configure provider, Terraform will speak with this provider, and this provider will speak with your AWS. But to speak with your AWS, it needs some kind of credentials, right? Do you agree with me on this? Yes? Okay. It needs credentials. Okay. Those credentials are something which we call as access key and secret key in the case of AWS. Okay. So Terraform speaks with AWS using access key and secret key. Once you give this access key and secret key, Terraform knows which account to speak about, with which account it needs to speak. Okay. And Terraform provider uses SDK to speak with AWS. It doesn't use CLI. It uses SDK because Terraform provider is a code that is written in Go language which speaks with AWS using its API. You and me need not know that. For you and me, what we need to know is how to configure resource. This provider will basically speak with AWS. Now, for me to speak with AWS, what is that I need to configure? I already need to have some AWS account. In that AWS account, I need to create access key and secret key. And then you need to create template. In the template, you need to configure provider. And when you are configuring provider, you need to pass access key and secret key. Okay, right? Okay. So if you have not using AWS provider, there is no need of access key, secret key, nothing, because AWS is not interested in AWS. Okay. So Terraform AWS provider uses the AWS APIs, okay, to get the infra created. Okay. So to create infrastructure in your AWS account, it needs AWS programmatic credentials. Yesterday, for the people who are learning AWS, I think we have spoken about programmatic access and console access. Okay. So it needs AWS programmatic credentials. So which is secret key and access. Okay. So to configure these keys, okay, once you generate this key, to configure these keys, what this documentation tries to tell us, there are 6 ways of doing it. Once you have your access key and secret key with you, there are 6 ways how you can tell me what is your secret key and what is your access key. First, it tries to tell that parameter in the provider configuration. Then it tries to tell that you can have environmental variables. The third one is shared credentials files, shared configuration files, container credential, instance profile. Okay, right. There are multiple ways how you can do it. Okay, right, sir. Today we will try to do it in a very unprofessional way. You should not be doing this, but that's okay. Let us start at unprofessional and we go in a better way. Okay. So first thing, what is that you need to do now? Create IAM, secret key, and access key. Okay. So for this, what I'll try to do is I'll try to give you some reference. You follow the images from there. Okay, the UI has changed, but the basic aspect remains the same. Okay. Yeah. Okay, sir. Refer here for manual steps. Okay, sir. Now I have AWS account with me. So in this, to give access key and secret key, I need to go to a service which is called as IAM. Right. So now, are you seeing users over here? So let me go to the users and then tell that I want to add a user. And this user, let me call the user as Terraform. Okay, right, sir? Now it is asking, do you want console access? No, I don't want console access. I want programmatic access. Next. Then it is asking, what is that you want? Go to attach policies directly and then select administrator access. Again, I'm trying to tell this is not a right way. If you know AWS, you should be giving minimum privileges, not maximum. Giving administrator access means you are giving full permissions. Okay, but that's okay. Let me click on next and create user. Did we create a user called as Terraform now? Now get into this user called as Terraform and are using security credentials. Okay, go to the security credentials, scroll down and are using access keys and secret keys. Create access key and you are using this for CLI access. Select this, next, create access key. So are using access key and secret key are available now. Okay, so you can download a CSV file so that these values will remain with you, because once you click on done, there is no way that you will be able to see, look at this secret access key. So let me download this CSV. CSV file is a text file. Okay, all you can do is right click this, open with Excel sheet or whatever it is, or simply you can open it with any text editor. This is your access key and this is my. Okay, so do I have secret key and access key with me now? Yes. Okay, right. Now shall we start writing Terraform? Yes, I'll not do much, I'll just create a provider. Okay, that much I can do on a Linux machine. Okay, right. So let me go with make dir sample tf cd sample tf. If you remember, we need to create a file with .tf extension, and yesterday we have trying to do main.tf. In main.tf, what I'll try to do is, okay, let me go to the documentation over here. Once you want to authenticate, okay, what is the first approach? Parameters in provider configuration. So it tries to tell that you need to try to write provider. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me try to write it over here. Let's write provider configuration. Okay, so provider configuration is, you would write provider, and what is the name of your provider? AWS. Okay, right. And in this there are many values which you can pass. Okay, but what are the values which you are passing? What is the region which you want to create? So let me try to write provider is, oh sorry, let me write it in one place and then copy. Region equals to, okay, if you know AWS, if you have logged in into AWS, select your any region which you want to create. So for example, if you want to create it in Hyderabad, what is the region? AP South 2. I want to create it in Oregon, so it is US West 2. If I want to create it in Singapore, it is AP Southeast 1. These are region codes. You need to give them exactly. So let me go over here and then let me try to write US West 2. Right? Okay. And then let us go back over here. And then there is something called as, what is your access key and what is your secret key? This is the worst idea. Let me try to tell you why. Okay, fine. So I have this notepad. In this notepad, my access key is this. And my, what is the next thing? Secret key. Secret key is equals to whatever I have downloaded that CSV file. I am basically using this, right? Okay. Now let me take all of this. Okay. Paste this. And what is the first command which you would write? Let us not try to remember. Let us try to look at this stuff. Okay. From today onwards, I'll be doing one extra step. Are you seeing there is something called as validate? So what will validate tell me? It will check whether the configuration is. So let us have a habit of adding this validate. So yesterday's workflow was first to do init. After init, yeah, apply. Now Terraform validate. Let us try to see what validate will tell. It tries to tell that, okay, you have asked me to validate, but to validate, I need a provider. So how do you get provider downloaded? Terraform init. So it is going to be Terraform init. After Terraform init, whenever we make changes, we are going to do validate. Then we are going to do apply. Okay. Now Terraform validate. The configuration is valid. Okay. Now, what is the problem with this approach? Will you ever write username and password in a text file which is open to everyone? Okay. So let me try to tell you what has happened. Few years ago, by mistake, when I was teaching this class, this access key and secret key, I have published it to GitHub. So some user got to know about my access key and secret key. In 3 days, my AWS bill was 7 lakh rupees. Okay. So this is what happens when you basically put your passwords directly on the open text. Yeah. The story is AWS identified that it was not me using it. It was someone else using it and they have slashed my bills. But if you try to do this on your organizational account, that means you are going to lose the job if some data breach happens. So this is definitely a worst idea. Okay. Let us not do this. Right. So then what is the best one? There are multiple ways of doing this. The easiest one is, okay, this is not a great way as we are having sensitive information in the text format. Okay. Best ways to install AWS CLI on the machine with Terraform. And Terraform will automatically pick up credentials from there. So in my case, yesterday it was working because on my system I have AWS CLI installed, which had the secret key and access key configured. So since it has secret key and access key configured, when I was trying to tell Terraform apply, it gone and searched with the CLI where what are your credentials, and it has said my credentials. That's the reason why it was working for me. Yes. So now this access key and secret key is open to everyone. So first thing which I would recommend is this key safe anymore? No. Go to actions and then at least deactivate. Okay. Better is to delete. Okay. So be very careful with your access keys and secret keys. అందులో కొత్తగా గిట్ నేర్చుకున్న వాళ్ళకి బాగా కుతూహలంగా ఉంటుంది. Right? Whoever have learned Git quickly, pushing everything to GitHub, you will be very much interested. ఈ మధ్య కాలంలో కూడా నేను ఎంత చెప్పినా ఇంకొకరు చేసి ఆయనకి 3 లక్షలు వచ్చింది బిల్. Right? So don't share your access keys and secret keys over the public platforms. Not a good idea. Right? అంత సరదాగా ఉంటే ఒక సెల్ఫీ దిగి పెట్టండి కావాలంటే ఫేస్బుక్ లో ఏమవుతుందో చూడండి. Right? Never ever put your access keys and secret keys, especially with administrator access. Yes, don't do that. Okay, now let me create a access key now. Okay. So again for CLI. Okay. Now let me create this access key. I will not be downloading any CSV files. Let me install AWS CLI. Okay. Installing AWS CLI refer here. So where is that I'm installing AWS CLI onto, sir? Linux machine. Okay. So I try to tell that if you are using Linux machine, all you need to do is execute these three simple commands. These three commands require something called as unzip, which might not be present on your machine. So the first command which I want you guys to do is get into your home directory, sudo apt install unzip hyphen y, and then blindly copy these three commands, paste it over here. Okay. Now you type AWS hyphen hyphen version and then AWS execute a command called as AWS configure. Then it will ask what is your access ID. So I'll go over here. Where is it? Whatever is my access key, I'll copy it and paste it. Whatever is my secret key, there is no need for me to show it to anyone. Just paste it over here. Default region name US West 2 and then okay. Now the best part is now your provider can be as simple as provider AWS. If you want, write region, or if you can ignore writing region also, because you have already configured about your region in access key and secret key in CLI. But still, let me try to write it. US West. Okay. So do you understand why stuff was working for me? Because make their test to cd test to vi main dot tf. Now Terraform init, because I've created a new folder. Yeah. If you do apply, nothing will happen because you have not asked for any resources. Okay. That step we'll do it in the next class. Right. Now Terraform validate. Yes. So which is secure, sir? Yeah. So yesterday, if you tried to remember, I have some S3 bucket which I've created. Okay. So let me try to open that Visual Studio Code and hello TF, right? I think this is what we have done yesterday. So if you try to look into it, let me copy all of this. Go into rm main.tf vi main.tf. Whatever I've done yesterday, I'm just pasting that over here. Now Terraform, I've already done init. So the only thing which I'm going to do is validate. Now Terraform apply. Okay. And then if you want, okay, whenever you do apply, it will ask, do you want me to continue or not? Are you saying that there's something called as auto approve? Okay. I am okay with you creating whatever you want. So I'm giving auto approve. Let us see whether it will create or not. Is it creating, sir? Yeah, it says that I have created a S3 bucket already. Now let me go to services, S3, open. Are we clear on? why the stuff was working for me yesterday? Yes, the story remains the same in Azure also, because in Azure also I'm using Azure CLI, which is a default credential. If you don't give any credentials, it will try to pick up from your CLI. So now I am done with this Terraform distro. Yeah. So is configuring the provider, first part clear? Yes. Okay. All right. Good, sir. So let me shut down this machine, because I'll be using this machine in the next session also. I'll be using the same machine, okay, to work with Terraform for some time. So let me try to say stop instance. Are we clear on this, sir? Yes. So the basic idea of Terraform is you need to configure provider, and for provider you need to give credentials. Okay. So in this class I'll never be using GCP. Okay, because my focus is on AWS and Azure. So let me go to Terraform provider GCP. Okay. All right. Okay, sir. Now, if you try to look into this, whenever you work with any provider as such, the first thing which you would do is, how do I configure Terraform? Getting started, configuring the provider. Are you saying there is something called as provider project? Okay. Yeah. So once you basically try to look into this, how do I configure the stuff? If you try to look into it, it tries to tell that try to install something called as GCP, any cloud. The story remains same. Authenticate with your CLI, and Terraform uses the same thing. If it is Azure tomorrow, I'll be installing Azure CLI, and in Azure CLI, I'll authenticate myself, and Terraform will use that credentials. Any cloud, this approach is common. Are we clear on this, sir? Yes. మన GCP వాడడం అసలు క్లాస్లో. We are not going to use GCP, but I'm just showing you this because tomorrow if you are asked to work on any cloud, the story remains same. Manual steps, configuring provider, and for every step which you are trying to do, what is the resource which I need to use, and what are the values which I'm supposed to fill. This is what we'll be doing. Right, sir? Good. Yeah. Right. So we'll be doing Azure tomorrow, sir. అన్ని ఒకేసారి చేసేయలేను కదా, నాకు చెయ్యాలని చాలా ఉంటుంది కానీ కుదరదు కదా, సమయాభావం. Right. So even if I want to do multiple things at one time, it is not possible. We have to take a sequential flow. Tomorrow I'll be doing whatever I've done in AWS on Azure as well. Yeah. Right. So please change the secret key in classroom notes. It's okay. I have deleted that. Okay. Now, if anyone wants to try, they can try that. Like, because Azure AWS will never give that secret key and access key to anyone again. Okay. Right, sir. Fine, sir. Yeah. So Naga, you had some questions with respect to JOIP, right? So anyone who has taken online JOIP already for the first foundation sessions, and if you have qualified in the exam, right, your sessions will start today at 11 o'clock. Okay. And generally we have JOIP demos on Thursday, right? But today we have a last grooming session. I'll be speaking about JOIP demos there. Okay. So for the people who want to join JOIP for the new batch. Okay. Right. What timings are the evening classes? Today we have the evening class at 5 to 6, where you and me will try to create a Linux machine on AWS if you have an AWS account, on Azure if you have an Azure account, and how to configure SSH key so that you don't need to do this nonsense every time. Okay, this is what we'll be doing in the evening session. Right, sir. Link will be shared to you. If you don't have that link, I'll try to ask admin teams to post that on the Slack. If you're interested, you can join that. Okay, right. Okay, that is the exam is for JYP people, sir. Okay, so if anyone wants to join JYP, tomorrow we'll have a demo, but we'll discuss about that. So yeah, right, sir. Yeah, yeah, you will get the link on any links you will be getting on the Slack. Right, sir. Okay then. So are we clear on this provider concept now? So if tomorrow if someone says that your organization is using Huawei cloud, enti? There is a Huawei cloud. I'm not sure how many of you know that. Huawei is a very giant in China. They have their own cloud. Can we do it from Terraform? All we need to do is figure out how to configure provider. If you are working on VMware, figure out on how to configure provider and how to configure your authentication information. And into this also there is a little bit of detailed stuff which we need to know, which we'll be doing tomorrow. Right, sir? Entire architecture, are we clear? Database layer, business layer, and then web layer. That is actually the architecture. But when it comes to the cloud, we have removed the web layer and we are putting something called as load balancer. Yes, right. That is what we will try to achieve initially. Okay. When we are installing Terraform, it is installing any specific AWS provider. No, sir. Generally, we go with the latest version. But if there are any failures or anything which we want specific, then we will specify the provider. Ideally, we want a latest provider written by them. Yeah, because it will have latest and greatest features. Am I clear on that, Sushil? Yeah. So you can specify a specific version of the provider, but that we will do it later. Today we just know how to configure provider, right? Yeah, right. Okay, sir. Let me stop it at that, and we'll meet again tomorrow to continue this discussion. And anyone who is new and do not know how to create accounts, don't forget to join in evening 5 to 6 grooming session. Yeah, right. Thank you, sir.